Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
Today's warehouse needs to keep inventory moving smoothly and quickly. Meet these challenges with on-demand warehouse labeling from Brother Mobile Solutions. Our mobile and industrial printers will help optimize your operations to achieve the speed, reliability, and durability your warehouse needs. With easy integration for existing warehouse technology, convenient portability, and upfront affordability, Brother Mobile Solutions is at your side when it comes to warehouse labeling. Try one for free today by visiting brothermobilesolutions.com/new warehouse or click the link in the show notes. That's brothermobilesolutions.com/new warehouse to try one for free today.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. On today's episode, I will be joined by Senna De La Cruz. He is the Vice President of Industrial and Logistics at Colliers. And Colliers is providing real estate services for the world, the country, and he is focused in on industrial and logistics, and we're specifically going to dive into the real estate warehousing market and talk kind of what's going on with that, and also sort of some gaps in the market and what people can expect when they're starting to look for new space as well. So, Senna, welcome to the show. How are you?
I am fantastic. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here. I've done a couple podcasts before, but every time is a new person, so I appreciate you having me.
Well, hopefully this is the best one so far. We'll see.
So got potential.
So it's good to have you on, definitely on the show. You know, obviously warehousing, you know, without real estate, there wouldn't really be much warehousing, right? Because we need space. We need physical space to make these things happen. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Colliers and specifically how Colliers services the warehousing market?
Yeah, so Colliers, we've got 18,000 professionals across the globe. We used to be called Colliers International because we do work all over the world. Right. And to put it simply for your listeners, we help buy, sell, and lease commercial real estate.
Right.
I focus primarily on the industrial side of things. Mm-hmm. So, I partner with large companies as they have facilities. Some will have it in Los Angeles, New Jersey, then they'll have it in Texas, and then they might have some stuff, in Vietnam across the pond.
Yeah.
And, it's our job to get an understanding of their current footprint, why their current footprint is the way it is, and then help to reevaluate, hey, you own these two facilities. Why is that? Why do you own those two, and why do you lease those two? What was the thought process behind setting up that facility the way that you did? And, sometimes it's correct. Mm-hmm. And then other times their business has changed along the years and they've grown and they have a different sort of target market that they had previously, or, one sector is more important than the other within their business. So constantly understanding where a company's currently at and where they want to go. Mm-hmm. And that's where we come in and try and help them out on the real estate side of things.
Got it. Interesting. So not only just, facilitating those transactions, but also kind of really helping to understand what the right transactions are in a sense. So I think that's really helpful. So obviously, with the real estate market, whether it's commercial or residential, right? It's kind of always changing, right? And people are always wondering, what's the state of the market, right? And all these different things. So when we look at warehousing, coming here into, the beginning of 2023, what would you say is the current state of the warehousing real estate market? What are we looking at here? Was it, prices going up, prices going down? Is there too much space, still not enough space? What do you think?
Well, I appreciate the question because it is a slightly loaded question. So I think I'm going to have to take a step back and kind of paint the picture of what's happened over the past couple of years.
Yeah, let's do it.
People can kind of understand relatively to, the big picture where we are now. Mm-hmm. Pre-COVID, the industrial market was strong. Real estate, everybody says it's a cyclical business. Right. Typically 7 to 10 years, the market resets itself. So I remember when I got into the business in 2017, the last crash was in 2008. And I was kind of like, oh man, I got a year or two to make something happen here before, everything goes belly up. So, 2017 was still robust. So was 2018, and then 2019, the subsequent years were still really strong. And when I say really strong, this is what I mean. Typically, owners of industrial real estate will project or anticipate or underwrite their business as if the market is going to increase 7 to 10% year over year. Okay. Meaning, starting at January, we think rents are going to increase 7 to 10%. Over the course until December 31st, of that year. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a strong, healthy market. And then COVID hit in 2020, and everybody got locked inside. Nobody could go out and buy things. Mm-hmm. So what did people do, right? Grandma, grandpa, who never, had logged into Amazon before, were kind of forced to do so. And so people are buying stuff online, and, the government's printing all this money. And so people are sitting at home saying, oh, I need this new couch, or, oh, I'd like to redo my kitchen, or whatever. And, these industries boomed. And so did the need for third party logistics and distribution and warehousing and transportation, because everybody needed their underwear, their toys delivered straight to their doorstep, right? So remember that 7 to 10% increase I talked about? Yeah. Over COVID, over 2021, industrial rents jumped 20% per quarter. Oh, wow. So instead of 7 to 10% over the year, it was 20% per quarter. So that's, a total of 80%. In some markets like LA, New Jersey, Dallas, Chicago, the major markets, it more than doubled. So, I say that to people, and sometimes they get what I mean, but when they don't, imagine you're renting an apartment for $2,000, right? And all of a sudden your landlord calls you and says, hey, you know what? Your lease is up. Your new rate is going to be $4,500.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
What would you do? Yeah. Right. So most people aren't ready for that. Most people aren't anticipating that. And neither were these companies. Right. So, we're at this point now where the new benchmark is so high that these companies who signed a lease prior to COVID, now their lease is expiring, because typically companies will sign a 5 to 7-10 year lease. Most of the time it's 5. And so if you signed a lease in 2018, 2019, and your lease is expiring in 2023, you're completely sticker shocked, right? And that's where we kind of come in. We're hounding these companies. We're calling these companies saying, hey, just so you know, the market is insane right now. And, these developers can't build fast enough because not everybody wants their items delivered as fast as possible, but nobody wants to live next to a warehouse.
Yeah.
Right. So
that's very true.
Especially here in California, maybe you can touch on the New Jersey market a little bit more in depth, but we have all these moratoriums where you can't build warehouses.
Yeah.
Yet, people want their stuff yesterday, right? So it's this battle between, where's the middle ground, and it's getting people to see that there's a whole process behind an infrastructure that needs to be put in place. Mm-hmm. And so these developers can't build fast enough to meet the demand of the consumer. So what does that mean? Right now, there was a ton of demand for warehouse space, but the developers couldn't build fast enough. Therefore, there's only a finite amount of vacant warehouse space. Mm-hmm. And if you need a particular type of square footage, layout, it's like, you could say, hey, I need 20,000 square feet, and there could be, 5 million square feet on the market, but you need a specific type of 20,000 square feet that may not be available at the time that you need it.
Interesting. Yeah.
So that's where we're currently at right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and to your comment, the New Jersey side, it's the same thing. Like, I live in Burlington County, New Jersey, and, they're building like crazy, but and I've grown up here, and it's always been like farmland, and people are very upset that warehouses are coming in. Yeah. And there's even, which actually you probably understand this, you're from LA, they put up a big sign on the piece of farmland that's, I think, soon to be developed, and the name of the town here is Chesterfield, and it says, "Welcome to Chesterfield's Skid Row, warehouse Skid Row," something like that. Huge sign, like right at this.
This up?
I don't know. Some residents, I guess, put it up, like, because we have people have signs in their front yards, like, stop the warehouses and all this stuff. It's pretty wild. So, but like you said, the same people putting up those signs probably are expecting, deliveries like next day, today, right?
Yeah, so someone's got to check their Amazon account.
Yeah. So there's certainly like this battle, right? But I think it's really interesting, and I see it here, like you said, in New Jersey, like one of the hottest warehousing markets is just constant development. It seems like every week, like there's a new warehouse going up somewhere. So I'm curious, like you said, there with the, there may be 5 million square feet available, but you're looking for like a specific set of space. So with that being said, there's certainly, and I've heard this from some people, and, myself too, I'm looking for like a smaller space kind of, and I've heard that that's very difficult to find. So, with the developers continuing to build, why is there like a gap in the market for like newer, smaller spaces, say like, sub 100,000 square feet?
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Sure, that's a great question. It really depends on what market you're in.
Yeah.
For example, in LA, I work primarily the South Bay market, which is the market with the closest proximity to the ports of LA and Long Beach, which receives 40% of all product that comes through the U.S. comes to the U.S.
Right.
And it was always over here. It was first generation space. It's, they were all the buildings were built between like the 1970s to then the newer developments are like 2000. And, now we're definitely building more, but since these bigger companies are the ones taking a lot of the market share, they are focused on, the bigger box distribution centers out in the Inland Empire, which is, I think, your guys' version of the Lehigh Valley.
Yeah, probably.
Right?
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
And there's in the infill markets where you're probably looking for that newer, smaller space. There's almost no more land to be developed. So you either have to upgrade an existing building and maybe raise the roof, add some docks. I think you guys call them bay doors over there in New Jersey.
Yeah, we use docks too. We say docks.
Oh, okay, cool. So then, it's like I know some value add owners who will go in and raise the roof. So now it's kind of, you got the bones of a brand new 36 foot clear building. It's very expensive to do that. But the infill is just kind of crowded, and, a lot of transloading occurs in those markets where the product doesn't sit. Those users make money every time they touch the product. So they're trying to get things in and out as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's really just almost a land issue. And then also, you try and go in and improve some of these buildings, or you go and try and build in certain markets, and, you get pushed back from the cities.
Yeah.
I do think though, those, unfortunately, the mom and pop users that, if their business wasn't built on strong fundamentals before COVID, they're going to really start to feel it here soon. And I think you'll see some of those types of buildings open up, and, you'll be able to go and grab them. But I always tell people, remember, because we're already at this new high watermark, this high benchmark.
Right.
So even as those companies start to, I guess, recycle out, there will still be other strong companies that have been waiting on the sideline for that space.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get this, at least I don't think you're going to get this, 50% discount, and they're going to drop immediately to pre-COVID levels.
Yeah.
That, some of my clients thought that was going to happen. They thought, the sky was falling at the Q1 of this year. And, from a user standpoint, I get it, right? Like you're like, oh, I want to get a discount on my real estate, and my margins will go up, whatever. But, I think there's still a lot of health in the businesses and in the marketplace on that front.
Step. Do you know how many steps your warehouse workers are taking a day? When your workers are walking, you're losing money. Endless trips to the printer or computer add up fast. Newcastle's mobile industrial carts with integrated power eliminate the walking to stationary printers and computers, keeping workers focused on high-value tasks, often doubling their output. Thousands of powered cart installations, including ones at the new warehouse's own micro-fulfillment center and in my previous jobs, prove that Newcastle customers get more done and save money. To learn more, head to newcastlesys.com. That's newcastlesys.com. Interesting. Yeah. Because I will say, like, I did see, some articles and posts on LinkedIn and stuff about people, talking or suggesting that, heading into this year, like, we would see like kind of it's like, like a bubble burst or something, like, and the rates, like would go down. But it sounds like you're saying that, they're still holding like pretty strong. Is that true?
Yeah, they might go down, right? Like, but even let's just say they go down 20%.
Yeah.
Right? Remember that analogy I used of your rent?
Yeah.
If you were paying $2,000 and you're at $4,500, and then the guy's like, okay, I'll give you a 25% discount from $4,500.
Right.
You're still paying upwards of $4,000, right?
Yeah. It's still high.
Right. So like the new benchmark is still. So you gotta. I've been telling my tenants and clients, like, just plan for the worst. Just plan that the market is gonna, maybe you'll see a 5 to 10% drop in rates, and if it's more than that, great. Like we'll take advantage of that when the time comes. But I wouldn't write your business plan based off of a 50% discount in rates.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right. Very interesting insights and advice there. So, we talked a little bit about kind of what the market's at right now and what's going on with leasing prices and things of that nature. And I'm curious, right now, as we look at the market, like I've certainly heard, in the past year, 2 years or so, like cold storage is in super high demand. What, as you're working with clients or you're getting like new clients or just listening to the market in general, what types of spaces in the fulfillment warehousing space are really in like very high demand right now?
It's a great question. I am actually, it's funny you asked that because I am just been, I guess you could say, inducted into the Colliers cold storage food facilities practice group. So we're going to be, it's this whole educational program and I guess you could say team focused on cold storage companies because there is such a shortage of those types of facilities.
Yeah.
So, it's with those types of companies who are seeing rapid growth, a lot of them have had to resort to build to suit opportunities, which, for your listeners that don't know, that's where, a company will pair up with a developer and they'll sign a contract saying, okay, you let us build you the building and then we'll lease it to you at, a favorable rate. Or sometimes they'll pair up with a developer and say, hey, we'll build you the building. We'll do all the work just how you want it. You're in the food business. We're the real estate developer. We know what we're doing. We have relationships with the city. Yeah. We know the process. And then we'll sell it back to you at the end for a pre-negotiated price.
Yeah.
And so that's what a lot of these companies have had to do on the cold storage side of things, just because there is no, that's one type of, I guess you could say, building there's not a plethora of. And developers are focusing on, I think, the bigger box, 1 million square footers, 500,000 square feet plus in those more suburban areas and rural areas. And I would say that's where the focus is at.
Yeah. I definitely see that. And I think the other side too is like, you can put up I see them around here. Like you put up these 500,000 million square foot buildings, like, they go up in like 3 weeks or something like that versus like a cold space could take, much, much longer because you have to build out that cold infrastructure and everything. So it makes sense that the developers are going in that direction, but do you see, because there is like, high demand for cold storage, right? Obviously. So
super high demand.
Yeah. So, do you see like at some point, if you were a developer, would you say like it's worth it to start developing cold storage because the demand is there, right? We just need to create some supply.
Yeah. It's a niche market for sure. Therefore, I think it requires a niche, I guess you could say educational, part of it. And it's also expensive, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So you got to know how to go through the process and then also just, whether if you're well funded or you got to find the money to do it. So in theory, I think it would be a great sector to focus on. I think it's just extremely complex.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting. Okay.
Maybe you and I can figure out a way to put some of these cold storage buildings up.
Hey man, yeah, maybe. I was looking for some cold space potentially, so maybe building one is the way to go. I don't know.
Exactly. Then you could do it the way you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting. So I definitely appreciate the insights here on the market and the real estate market and warehousing and things of that nature. Before we kind of wrap up here, if someone
Kevin, sorry to interrupt you. I just to kind of close out on that. I just want to be transparent with your listeners that I've had a ton of conversations, and you can kind of see, which professionals are a little bit more, I guess you could say they let their hair down and they're just a little bit more honest and real. And the ones that really do that, they all admit that like anybody who tells you this is going to happen or this is the way it's going to go has no idea, because where we are today has literally never happened ever.
Yeah.
It's like macroeconomically and as it relates to industrial real estate, like where we are today in industrial real estate, it has never happened before, ever.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it's super interesting because, you know, with the pandemic, I mean, it's such like an unexpected, like it's such like was like such a down, like decline thing, like on like emotionally and, you know, just health wise and, you know, obviously like that whole thing. But then like on the other side, it's like in our world, right? And like, you know, warehousing, e-commerce, fulfillment, it was like the biggest spike like ever, right? It was like really crazy. Like actually I talked to somebody earlier today and he's like, man, he's like, the pandemic is like the best thing that ever happened to my business. He has an e-commerce 3PL, and it's like, for sure. It's like kind of like terrible to say something like that, but it's like, it is, you know, in that case, like for us, like it's just like, you know, booming. So it is really interesting, definitely. But I was going to say, before we wrap this up, I was going to say, you know, for people that are, you know, listening and potentially looking for additional space, whether it's, you know, they're expanding their current space or they're looking for a new space to build out into, what type of advice or guidance would you give them right now, knowing how the market is?
Yeah. So what I would do is I would get out a piece of paper and write down the phone number 310-265-3397. No, I'm just that was a little plug on my end. So you'd want to, first of all, I would say, get in front of your lease expiration, or just start talking about it months before you think you need to. Like if you're like, okay, my lease expires in 8 months,
right?
Start talking about it like, you know, I would say 12 months prior, just so that you have, because right now what's happening is some landlords don't want to talk about a lease expiration until like a year to 6 months before it expires, because they want to capture the market rent growth.
Okay.
Right. Mm-hmm. You know, let's take an apartment, at least, you know, if you rent an apartment on a year term, your landlord is going to want to say, hey, you know, I don't want to start talking to you until a month before your lease expiration, because, you know, the market could have gone up significantly. Versus if you call him and you're like, hey, I really like, you know, my apartment, I have 8 months left on my lease. Can we negotiate a deal today?
Yeah.
You know, you might be able to get a good rate at that time, because you lock in a rate there, and he says, yeah, I'll extend your lease for 8 months. And, you know, here's the price. And then all of a sudden you win as the tenant or, you know, company, because you negotiated earlier when the market was lower. Now, do we think it's going to increase as it's been increasing? I personally don't think so. However, I don't have a crystal ball, but it's nice to still engage in the conversation so that he knows that you're thinking about it and that you're being strategic and professional about it. And then just for your sake, like, because he may quote you something that day, and then, you know, 6 months from now, the market completely turns, let's just say for the worse. And even though he quoted you a price, you know, that was higher, and then you didn't act on it, and then it drops off, he could be, you know, calling you saying, hey, you know, I know I said this, but, you know, the market's turned and I just wanted a good tenant. And so now, you know, it's a new negotiation, but even more in your favor. But at least you had that, I guess you could say, you had that price or that safety net in the background the whole time, versus people who kind of wait till the end. It's kind of hard to be strategic when it's kind of like, okay, let's renew now, and here's what it is. Type of thing.
Yeah. And you like have to renew because you need a space. Right? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Interesting tip there and strategy, definitely. And I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking to us about the market and some advice too as well. I think it was a really insightful episode, so I appreciate your time. And if people this is your chance to plug now, if people are interested in getting in touch with you or getting in touch with Colliers to help them with their, you know, warehouse real estate needs, how can they do that?
Yeah, you can email me. I'm on LinkedIn. You can email me at senna.delacruz@colliers.com. Maybe I'll throw a link in to Kevin below, attach it to the podcast somehow, some way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm pretty easy to find. You know, you can Google my name and my Colliers website pops up, and my cell phone's on there, so pretty easy to find in that way.
All right, great. And we'll definitely put all that information at thenewwarehouse.com so people can easily find it. So, Senna, thank you once again for your time on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.